Okay, take two on this one. We're going to try to record a little Terry's take on You Like Me Mama, Not My Daughter, also known as Musume Janakute, Mama ga Suki Nano. Again, this is a light novel about basically it's a mom con kind of series, but it's about a neighbor to the boy that likes her, or I should say, man that likes her, 20-year-old man that ends up liking this 30-year-old mom. And we'll kind of get into who these characters are, their motivations, some of the plots and themes in the story, and just kind of generally introduce you to this work. Some light spoilers because we're going to kind of dissect what the progress of the story is, kind of what the path of this particular volume is. Won't try to guess too much about Volume 2, although Volume 2 is coming soon. So I wanted to get this one out there. Alright? So let's jump into it. So first off, I made this slide for fun. Somebody was asking, is our Mummy series, like, is that a genre? And I responded with this, which is basically all the MomCon series that have come out. Not necessarily all mom-con, but some of them aren't necessarily romantic towards the mom, but obviously you have the one in the bottom left corner that I think kind of started this whole thing out, which was Do You Love Your Mom and her two-hit multi-target attacks. And since then we have had this explosion of mummy isekai series, but now we're kind of going back to reality, and you've kind of seen another push, which is these sort of older sister, or in this case, mother characters, not necessarily blood-related mother characters, but mother characters, next door neighbors and things like that. These older female characters that are having, romantic comedy scenarios in reality, no fantastical element. So let's just jump into it. First off, we'll talk about the author. This author is acclaimed. They have a lot of series that are ongoing. They have a lot of series. They have one series, major series, that is wrapped up. They've written a lot of novels in their time. So this author, I believe, according to Bookwalker, they've been active since 2012. They may be active before then, but that's what their author profile shows on Bookwalker. Obviously, their big hit was Inu Battle, or When Supernatural Battles Become Commonplace, which, if you didn't see it, there was an anime for that series. And I think it was like a 12-episode, one-core anime. And that series completed, wrapped up, and then the author kind of started to do these older character arcs, these older character types. You can even see in the bottom right-hand corner, there's one about a light novel writer. I believe that character is supposed to be older. I could be wrong, but I think they're supposed to be an older writer. And then they got into sort of more of these older sister type, motherly type kind of characters, with that maid sister one in the bottom. And then, of course, the one that on the top right, which is called The JK I Liked, was 27 years old. So he or she has kind of progressed to doing these kind of stories where they're focused on older heroines. Now, this one is a little different than I think those stories. I believe that those stories are still a male character perspective with female characters involved that are, older characters. This one is the perspective of the mom for the most part. So I find that interesting. Let's get into the illustrated profile just really briefly, just kind of show you their work. And I really enjoy their illustration quality, personally. Things they do with the hair and just the colors and everything, very vibrant. I do like this illustrator, and obviously if you look at the illustrations for this book, I think they're pretty solid. Again, they can do like the etchy stuff or they could do the non-ecchi stuff. I mean, I think they have a pretty good range. But yeah, none of their series have really been like super hits. The one on the bottom left corner had 4 volumes. You could see the volume 4 cover there. None of the other ones really had like a ton of volumes. Some of them were only 1 volume, and who knows if they're wrapped up. Some got to 2. But yeah, just not as high profile, but I think their work kind of speaks for itself. I think these covers are all beautiful. Alright, so let's get into the story proper. So here are our characters. We start with Ayako, who is the main character, Ayako Kasuragi. She is a mother. She's a working woman. She actually adopts Miyu, who we'll get into kind of the start of the story. Miyu, at the very start of the story, Miyu and Takumi are both at a funeral for Miyu's parents. Very sadly, off screen, they died trying to rush to pick her up from the daycare center. Obviously, horrible opening, but they kind of skim over that, and they're at the funeral home. And the big thing that happens here is that all of Miyu's family is basically rejecting her. They're like, "Oh, I can't take her to my place." They're coming up with excuses not to adopt her. So like some people are like, "I have to take care of your father. He's 69 years old and he's senile. I can't take care of 2 people." And then there's another person that's like, "I can't take her in, because if I take her in, I'll get fired from my job. I can't split time between work and a kid." And they're all coming up with these excuses, some more valid than others. Some even that are just like, if I take her in, I won't be able to bring a girl home. I'll never get married. Which again is a real concern for a character like Ayako. I think even her mother tries to kind of warn her against taking Miyu in. But Ayako stands up defiantly and says, "I'm taking her. I don't want to spend another minute in this funeral home." And she takes her out. And that is kind of the start of this tale and the start of Takumi/Takun, our male character. When he's 10 years old at the time, he sees Ayako's 20-year-old career woman taking in Miyu. It's a very defiant stand that she takes against all the prognosticators about, "Oh, that won't work," or whatever. And he starts to kind of fall for her at that point. So again, this slide just kind of goes through that opening. You can pause it if you want to read through it. But again, it's just that opening where we kind of get to see the determination of Ayako. And later, Takun, he has a little bit of a heart-to-heart with her, where he gets to see her at her weakest and most vulnerable. We'll get into that. That's kind of another flashback that they go to later. It has a bit of controversy attached to it, maybe. I could be reading into it, totally wrong, and I'm fine with that. But I think there's some level of controversy to it. Again, a lot of the story is built on, characters that are doing things, and they're not doing them with any malicious intent, but what they do has broad-ranging effects on other characters. So let's get into the story proper. So there's a time skip after the funeral home section. 10 bears later, we're now reintroduced to our characters. Miyu is now 15 years old. She's going to high school. She is totally into the daughter thing. The mom is totally into the mom thing. Again, just to give an example of this relationship that they have, Ayako kind of takes care of Miyu in the morning. She cooks her breakfast. She tries to wake her up, but Miyu never wakes up on her own. And it's not until like 5 minutes before she has to go, she gets up and she's like, "Mom, why didn't you wake me up?" And she's like, "I tried to wake you up like 7 times. So yeah, Ayako is basically taking care of Miyu at this point. And their mother-daughter relationship is good. It's solid. And Takumi, He has been also taking care of Miu to an extent. He's kind of been a role model for her. He's been her tutor and just generally helping her out. I believe he even picks her up in the morning every day to bring her to school, to basically escort her there, and then he goes to college. So, yeah, he's a 20-year-old university student, gifted student. He's an athlete, which we'll get into kind of his motivation to start swimming later. And, yeah, so should probably get into what happens with these two, because obviously you can see the image on the right. This is the confession scene. Basically, Takun was having his birthday, which happens to be my birthday this week as well. So this is great timing for me. Takun is having his 20th birthday party, and obviously this is kind of that time where you feel like an adult at this point. You know, sure, he's still in school, he's still in college, so it's still not ideal to kind of be trying to find a wife or anything at this point. But they have a few drinks, the mood hits him right, and he decides to confess that yes, he's in love with Ayako. This catches her off guard because she thought he was in love with her daughter. Again, he's been doing all this stuff for the daughter, taking her to school, tutoring her, and everything. Turns out he was doing all this stuff to help Ayako out, you know, which makes sense, right? I mean, if, he has the opportunity to help her even a little bit, he's going to do it. And, yeah, it catches her off guard. And we'll get into kind of the plot proper at this point. So here is how the plot develops. Again, confession over wine. Now, Ayako's dilemma. How does she answer Takumi? Takumi leaves the question of, going out with him or how she's going to respond to his confession. He totally leaves it on the table. He just confesses, and that's it. And he basically tells her, I don't need to hear an answer now, but, at some point, if you can give me an answer, that'd be great. But he says, I don't need it now. You don't have to rush, basically. This is like problem number one, is that he sets this whole thing up, and now it's just going to fester, this problem of how is she going to answer? And when does she have to answer is another issue. He didn't give her a timeline or anything. So she has all the time in the world, but it's also all the time in the world to kind of have this problem and the awkwardness of knowing that he likes her kind of come up in everyday life. So at first, she tries to act normal and like nothing happened and kind of tries to blow it under the rug. She thinks that maybe they were just kind of drunk the night before and that it was just the alcohol talking. And so she's like, don't worry, I don't, remember anything about what happened last night. I know it was the alcohol talking. And of course, he's resolute and is like, no, this is how I really feel. But again, says, you can wait to answer me. Again, that problem's going to kind of fester. She has some flashbacks later on to when she was interacting with the 10-year-old or a little bit older version of Takumi, and some of the things that she said to him, and we'll get into that later too, that sort of spurred this on, and she realizes that she was basically one of the only people involved in their whole, family, friend dynamic that didn't know what was going on this whole time. So she kind of has to have that flashback moment and see the past to tell, like, oh, that's why he fell for me. So we get to see those sequences later in the story, and again, we'll get to them. Let's see, what else? Oh, so her first stage of grief, denial. This is kind of the main crux of this story, is Ayako trying to deny Takumi's feelings for her. And she does this through coming up with schemes or plans. She's going to try to get Takumi basically to give up on her. And the way she's going to do it is by making herself seem as unappealing as possible. And obviously the reality of her being a 30-year-old mother, she tries to lay that on thick. The reality of her being older, not as primed or good looking as someone is younger necessarily. She tries her hardest basically to make herself seem as bad as possible to Takumi, and we'll kind of see how those plans work out. But of course, this is a gag comedy. That is the main gag is her trying to make herself seem unappealing to him. Doesn't always work out. So we'll get into that as well. And this story will end with Ayako's response. How's she gonna respond? Is she gonna say that she likes Takumi? Is she gonna say that she can't do this? We'll see what happens. And of course, the conclusion, we find out, whether she likes him or not, or what's going to happen going forward, what's her answer, and then a little bit of a preview of kind of what to expect in Volume 2. And I'm sure Volume 2 will kind of pick up right where this left off. So let's get into a little bit more of the themes of the story. So we'll get into the themes and kind of the other characters involved in the story at this point. So one of the themes is society versus desire, sort of committing yourself to the ideals of society versus what you want. Obviously, a 20-year-old guy dating a 30-year-old mom. It can be, I don't know, I wouldn't, personally necessarily judge that, but other people will judge it in the neighborhood, or, other people in the area will judge it. So there is a bit of personal pressure when it comes to that, and just Aiko thinking that it's just not quite right or proper. And there's, of course, also the element that it just kind of blindsides her. So that will be a big theme, is society versus desire. But it's not just if she desired him, she can't have him because of society. It's also, there's an element of peer pressure to this, where the support group around them is actually really good and really in favor of them getting together. Like, almost all the characters involved in the story so far are at the very least okay with it. From Takumi's parents to Miyu, the daughter, to even friends and family of them, co-workers. A lot of people are in support of these two getting together. But this creates a level of peer pressure for Ayako, who, again, is blindsided by all this, doesn't really see Takumi, at least initially, as a man. She sees him as the boy next door, who she took care of, when his mom would go on retreats or whatever, she would let him stay at her house, and all this time she's thought that he is a candidate for her daughter, a romantic candidate. So it creates some problems, obviously, when you've got these other characters kind of trying to push for, let them get together. They're like the reader who's trying to push for all the ships. But the ships shouldn't necessarily sail that quick when these characters aren't really attracted to each other yet. There is the theme of bullying, just when Takun is very little. We'll get into that in a second. The theme of improving oneself, again, that goes back to Takumi and sort of his change over the course of the story from when he was 10 to now. Heroes, again, Ayako as the hero for Takun. She's kind of a model for him. Her courage, her bravery to take Miyu in that moment. But then also he kind of realizes that heroes, they have their weaknesses, and we'll get into that as well. So again, this is a gag comedy. It operates on schemes of Ayako to try to get Takun to not fall in love with her. And there's also the gag comedy element of, you knew? You knew this whole time that he liked me? They do that you knew thing 5 times in the story. So all of the above jokes, though, they won't be used going forward, as far as I know. Obviously, if they introduce a character who is supposed to be a relative, they might do the you knew thing again. But the schemes, at least the schemes from this one, they won't be using that again. Ayako gives an answer at the end about whether she likes Takumi or not, so she won't be using schemes to make him fall out of love with her again, at least not in the same kind of way that this one did. So yeah, I think they stretched it just enough. Like the pacing in the story is really good. If this does get localized, I think people are gonna like the pacing overall. Like they know when to cut out of a scene, when to go to a flashback. But the only annoying thing I would say, the only thing that kind of perturbed me was there is one scene that's very short, but ends up getting 3 drawings for it. Again, it's of course the sexualized scene, so they kind of play that element up. But yeah, that would be my only little annoyance with this one. I think they picked all the right moments to go to another scene or to drop like a story gag right when it was starting to get annoying. So yeah, I liked it, and I'm very curious to see where they go forward with the comedy. Again, content rating. Obviously, we've got this picture, which is of that scene I was talking about. So let's get into that scene. So there's a flashback 10 years ago when Takumi was 10, Miyu was 5, and Ayako was 20 at the time. Ayako basically lets Takumi come to her house because he's sitting outside in the rain. His mom forgot to give him her key to the house, and I forget what she was going on with her, but obviously either some kind of drinking retreat or some kind of work-related thing that had her out of the house for the night. So Ayako invites him in. He's soaking wet, sopping wet, so she lets him use the tub. But because of how she's been raising her daughter, she just thinks it's totally normal to, wash off this kid too. She treats him like he's 5, basically. And yeah, so it can be a bit of an awkward scene, definitely, to me. And I could see some potential for grooming claims with this scene. Because basically, the main guy, Takun, he's talking with Ayako while they're in the bath. Ayako kind of gives away all her problems that are going on with her, which she lays these on Takun, and she probably shouldn't. He's only 10, and she's telling him about how I don't know if I'm doing well at work. I don't know how people are judging me for being a mom and all this stuff. And she kind of lays this on Takumi, and he realizes, oh, even though she's my hero, she's got her own problems and difficulties. And she even says, like, it's tough. My daughter, she's not doing well at school, and, I don't have all the time in the world to spend with her that I would like because she has to work. She's a single mom. So she lays this all on him, this 10-year-old boy, and he realizes, oh crap, I've really got to help her out. And that kind of changes his whole mindset with how he's going to grow up and how he's going to act with her. And at this point, he does kind of fall for her because of those sensibilities and those things. He realizes how vulnerable she is, that she does need some force in her life to help her out with all this, alleviate some of that stress. And so he thinks he can be that force, I guess. Also, Takun lays his problems on her, which, again, he's 10 years old. That's more normal to me, a 10-year-old telling a sort of parental figure what's going on with them. That's normal. But her advice to him is, it changes the whole course of his life. So I could see someone, especially just the scenario that they're in the tub together and everything, I could see somebody saying this is super controversial or whatever, and grooming claims because he does change, basically his whole persona, his identity, because of what she tells him to do to avoid bullying. So when Takun was a kid, he was picked on and bullied because he was small, weak in stature, and so she tells him, all right, you know what you should do? You should get popular. And you know how you can get popular? You can join an athletic team. And, if you join an athletic team and if you work out, you'll get bulky and muscles, and no one will make fun of you. No one will try to pick on you. And so he takes that to heart, and he starts working out and becomes super gifted as a swimmer. As far as I know, that's what happens. And so I could see someone having problems with this one because it almost seems like she made him into who she wanted him to be, or like what she would see as popular. Um, Again, I don't think it's enough to be like, oh, we shouldn't get this one stateside. But the scene is definitely creepy. I mean, I'm not gonna lie. And again, it gets 3 drawings. And then the part 4, there is an Otokonoko character. Again, Otokonoko not necessarily controversial in and of itself. There was some language, though, associated with the Otokonoko that, I don't know, depending on how it's translated, maybe it could be controversial. But yeah, I don't think that in and of itself is necessarily controversial. But yeah, there could be some language that could offend. Okay, so the strong points of this story, again, we kind of got into the controversy, now we want to pick it back up with some things that are good in this. It's a female perspective character. We get to see Ayako, who is a mom, who has, again, her, troubles, has her, the things that she excels at. You get to see how that relationship between her daughter and her becomes a close bond. At first, they're aunt and niece, and then eventually they're mother-daughter, and it's like after the 10 years passes, it's like they were never aunt and niece. It's almost like she was always her mom. I really like getting to see Ayako's perspective, and obviously seeing her frazzled is a lot of the story as well, and I think they capture that well in the art. Again, positive characters. Again, you could see some of these characters as being pushy. I could easily see someone not liking some of these characters and the way that they're kind of trying to push Ayako towards Takun and having a relationship. But yeah, I think overall they just want her to be happy. And they think that she should have the opportunity for love, especially her daughter. I think that's fine for her. I don't think it's fine for her necessarily to push her towards Takun, but I think it's totally fine for her to be like, I want you to be happy, I want you to find love. Don't worry about me, I'm 15, I can take care of myself, I can take care of the dishes and the cleaning and stuff like that if need be. And you kind of get to see her do some of this stuff because she gets so frazzled. At a certain point, Miyu has to take care of herself, and she'll do it. And I think at this point, Ayako does have some opportunity to date. And we'll hopefully get to see some of that in future volumes. Again, it's pure love comedy focus. There's almost no rivals. I won't say none. There is a character maybe at the end. We'll see. But, yeah. I don't want to spoil anything for you. So you'll see how that plays out with the ending. And but yeah, there's almost no rivals in this story. Almost all the characters are adult. The only character that is a kid is Miyu, and she's very mature overall. And then it knows when to shift perspective again. Like I said, the pacing is incredibly good, I think. So this was my I'm learneding slide. So, at the funeral, Miyu's expression is compared to this phrase. They use this phrase, "a borrowed cat," to explain how she's looking. And this proverb refers to someone who is acting more well behaved than they usually are. It's from the belief that cats act more tamely when outside their typical home. So it was almost like she was acting like a borrowed cat when she was at the funeral, and I guess that means that she was acting more well behaved than usual, and it was scary how well behaved she was acting. So yeah, Again, I might have that wrong, the context, but I know it was in the story, A Borrowed Cat. That phrase was in there. So if you wanted to learn a little something, there you go. Reception for this one, very good. Especially Kimi Rano, which is the bottom left one, the ranking system. It has been ranked number one. I think it only spent one day out of the number one spot, like this week. It has been number one for months. Like, months. The monthly, the daily, the weekly. It is number one on all of them. And it has been for a long time. Doesn't matter who the challenger is. The challenger can be like some super known, commodity, like Classroom of the Elite or something. This story is still number one on that site. Now, as far as I know, Kimi Rano, basically, it's a preview hub. So when you click on it, it gives you a little bit of info on the story. It gives you some of these pictures that you're seeing in these slides. Some of those are on Kimi Rano. So you get to see all of this stuff on there. And I think every click gives it a hit. And people are just clicking enough that this thing is still at the top. I do remember the Twitter post that was out when this initially got announced. Like, it hadn't even had like a full-on, book, page for it on Bookwalker or anything. It was just the preview image that the author posted. It had so many hits. I think it had like 9,000 likes in, a few months. And within the first week, it had like 8,000 likes, I think. So yeah, very popular series, even for one volume. Amazon sold out of it in one day. Bookwalker, it finished 5th in the daily ranking, behind heavy hitters, in its release week. It did get reprinted at least once, maybe twice. So yeah, this was extremely popular. You can see the 5th place rank there. Did well on Amazon. And then this is just a little funny thing. I forget the actor's name. I'll put him in the description if I remember. But the actor that plays Charles, what's his name? From Kiss Him Not Me, I think Mitsumi Shinichi from Parasite, and Minato from Grimgar. That actor tweeted about this, and I think now, of course, Google's TL is just awful, but I think it was basically saying, not only is the cover attractive, but the inside is as well. That's what I think it's saying, but you can tell me I'm totally wrong in what it's actually telling us. And so this is the cover for Volume 2. Volume 2 is coming very soon. I think they said it's either March or April. I think it's April. But yeah, it's coming shortly. And yeah, that's pretty much it on this one. So if you do have any questions, please leave them in the comments. If there's anything like you want to know about, I've read it. Again, it's been a few months, so this isn't probably as detailed as the previous video that I did, the previous Terry takes. But yeah, I did enjoy this one. I hope it comes stateside. At the very least, I hope someone's translating this one in the future. I think it deserves it. I did not read this one. I'm going to call it previewing it because I just kind of glanced through it with the Google TL. But yeah, so I don't consider this reading. But of course, there are web novel translations that are basically MTL out there on the webs that I see people talking about as well. I pretty much just did this so I could do a preview of it, not so I could say, I read it, but just to kind of say, it's something I want, and to inform people about it. And hopefully we can get this stateside, or again, at the very least, I would love to see a translation for this series. With Volume 2 coming, I think people might be more excited and more invested and feel basically more the right to be invested because it's not just going to get canceled out from under them yet. So again, this is Terry's Takes signing off. See you next time. Bye.